Thank you for having me here. I'm very happy to present here today. As it was already mentioned in the previous sessions, Denmark and Korea have very strong relations within green transition. This was also founded back in 2012 with the Green Growth Alliance between the two prime ministers, where Denmark and Korea, they made an MOU to collaborate on the green transition, sharing knowledge, collaborate, share each other's experiences to further the green transition together. And for me, this highlights the importance of international collaboration in this area. This is a global problem. Climate change cannot be handled by one country alone. We need a global solution. And we need to stand on the shoulders of each other, basically taking the know-how and the strongholds that the different countries have to bring to the table and not see as each other as competitors in this area. We also need a global commitment here, and I think this is what the politicians are seeking to do at the COPs. Basically, everybody needs to take responsibility for this issue. This is not something I'll go too much into today, because the focus for my presentation is how you can tackle or address the climate change issue from a science policy perspective. And I'll do this by giving an introduction to the Danish Green Research Strategy, and also the 4 Danish inner missions which have been established to tackle or handle or reach the objectives of the Danish carbon neutrality goals. This is a short outline of the agenda for today. I will give you a short introduction to the Innovation Center Denmark Seoul, where I'm based. I will give you a little bit of introduction to the Danish strategies within carbon neutrality. Then we'll go into the Green Research Strategy, the 4 partnerships in the inner missions, and some examples of projects here. And I think we can do all of it within 20 minutes, so you can also get home to your families. So first of all, Innovation Center Denmark, I think it might be necessary to explain this concept to some of you who doesn't know us. We are a joint venture between the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Danish Ministry of Higher Education and Science. We have centers like the one here in Seoul in 7 hubs globally. Basically, they're placed in what we call innovative hotspots, where we can see that there is a strong basis for collaboration and where we can bring knowledge back to the Danish ecosystem. But of course, it's also important for us as an innovation center to take some of the Danish strongholds to the countries where we are placed. And I hope we can inspire with some of the activities that Denmark is known for within the green transition. Basically, the whole purpose of the innovation centers are to create new solutions based on the ideas and the concepts of industry and academia, and doing this in an international sphere. So basically, we are an extended arm of the Danish innovation system, ensuring that we have the international aspect in there. Because as I said initially, we cannot solve the big challenges on our own. We need to bring in the knowledge and the strongholds from other countries. And this is what we're doing at the Innovation Center here in Seoul, and also what they're doing at the other different innovation centers around the world. We're doing this by focusing on the synergy between research and commercialization. You can say to some extent it's similar to the ESG, that we need to have both the research aspect in there, we need to have the commercialization aspect in there, the industry part, and we also need to have the government part in there to ensure we have the triple helix model covered in the activities we do. We also need to make the access or the bridge to the global community here. I think science by nature is international. It's very common for researchers to work with peers all over the world. So to some extent you can say this is already happening, but what we are trying to do as an innovation center is to bring the stakeholders together from the different sectors. So also bringing in the government aspect and the industry aspect to see how can we together develop new solutions. One of the other things we're also looking in at the center is the access to talent and knowledge. We see a strong interest for Danish talent to go to Korea and vice versa. Of course, there's also an issue of funding. Research funding on the international scene is always important. Basically, it's what makes the collaboration actually do something at the end, so you don't just meet at seminars and conferences, but you actually have a chance to do research together. And as I said, the ultimate purpose is to co-create some new solutions to some of the challenges we are facing. Each innovation center, they have different focus area, but basically all of them are focusing within the green transition. This is a key priority area in Denmark. We focus within life science and digitization. Here in Korea, our main focus is on the green transition. We are especially focused on green hydrogen because of the Korean stronghold in this field and because of the Danish stronghold in renewable energy. We're also focusing on the urban solutions. We can see that cities are playing an increasing role in handling some of the challenges we're facing. And in Korea, you have so much going for you on the whole smart and digitalized cities that is very good for us in Denmark to learn from, and vice versa. Maybe we can bring some of our knowledge in the more environmental sector to Korea, and in that sense, we can actually make benefit of each other. Finally, we're also looking into sustainable and healthy foods. I think it was shown in one of these previous presentations what it actually means. The food source, with a growing global population, if everybody keeps on eating like we do in Europe, we're going to be running out of a planet very soon. So this is a very important factor to find different food sources that can meet the needs and can also be a little bit more carbon friendly to our environment. Within the tech area, we're mostly focusing on quantum technology and the Korea strongholds within metaverse and extended reality. We do this by various different ways. I won't go too much into it, but basically it is to bridge stakeholders in each ecosystem. So to go a little bit more into the topic of today, I will give you a short intro to some of the government strategies within carbon neutrality. Carbon neutrality is not a new issue in Denmark. I think we're quite known for our strongholds within renewable energy. The windmills is very commonly associated with the Danish industry, and we do have a very large share of energy coming from renewables in Denmark. We have objectives in this area to go to 100%. But the strategy, so the Danish Climate Act, was actually only made quite recently. And that was made in 2019 and went into force in 2020, where the Danish government, they committed themselves to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 by 70%, and again in 2050 to reach net zero. And this is, of course, a big task for any government, especially a government in a country that is already so industrialized as Denmark is. And to achieve this target, you need to put some action in, and this is what I'm presenting today, how we're doing this from the science policy view. So basically, I don't think it's new for scientists and science to be involved in the climate issue. I think scientists was probably some of the first people to raise concern about the way the world was heading. I think it took a while for politicians to listen, but now I think they are listening to see, okay, how can we actually also use the knowledge from science to develop the new solutions needed, the technological solutions, or maybe also the knowledge of how we work as humans to also see the whole social humanity aspect of handling climate change. But what is new in Denmark is that, okay, let's take the knowledge we have and see how can we form this into the new technologies. And this was done with the Danish Green Research Strategy, which came in 2020. Basically, it was the first national strategy for investments in green research and technology innovation. Previously, we've had a lot of investment in this area, but we haven't made a strategy on this is where we want to go, this is what we want to achieve. So this was something new for the Danish system. As part of the strategy, there was also a promise between the politicians to keep the Danish funding for green research to at least 2.3 billion in upcoming years, and actually it has exceeded that level. I think we are around 3 billion DKK invested every year, and to put that into, I can't do it into Korean won, but maybe I can do it into dollars. That would be around $400 million per year invested in green research. The key elements of the green research strategy was to, as I said, to keep the level of investments from 2022 to 2024, and also to establish these new 4 green innovations, which is a new concept in Danish research, but maybe not so new to Europe, where we have also within the last years seen a focus on mission-driven research and public-private partnerships to tackle some of the issues we're standing over. So it was outlined, the headlines for the 4 green innovations in the strategy, and they had been allocated 700 million by Parliament in 2021, with additional funding given in 2022. But going from just the objective and the strategy to making a green research strategy to say, okay, all the nice things we want to achieve, and then actually setting up the structure to implement it, it took a while. First and foremost, they needed to identify what are the missions that can actually help us to achieve the 70% target and the net zero target. And they did this by getting inputs from industry, from Climate Partnership, which was actually established, 14 different partnerships between universities, industries, and public sector. They got input from universities, business organizations, trade unions, NGOs, and so on. They had cross-ministerial working groups to also see what do we already know. And they did also some analysis on where is Danish research already strong, and where do we have an opportunity in Denmark to pitch in on this global challenge, and in which areas we might not be the ones to be first movers on doing research here. Also, there were some criteria made to establish these missions. 4 criteria were made. It needs to have green potential. It needs to have a business strength and potential. There needs to be a research strength. And also, very importantly, because this is partnerships between academia and industry, there needs to be a potential for partnerships here. And I don't think it's necessarily easy to establish partnerships among industry and academia. The culture, the perspective can be quite different. You can have quite different ideas about what's needed or how you get there. You can have quite different interests. Researchers generally are focused by the long term about the basic research, the fundamental changes, and industry in general have a tendency to look a little bit more short term. What can we achieve within, a little bit shorter time range? So this was a key part of doing this mission-driven research. The whole goal of the missions is actually twofold. Of course, it is to contribute to the 70% target, but it's also to contribute to making the Danish industry or keeping the Danish industry competitive in the global world. And basically, the missions, they should not only deliver solutions, of course they should deliver solutions to our climate issue, but they should also bring technology that Denmark and Danish industry can take abroad. Not only, of course, because that's good for their business, which it is, but also because, again, we believe that what we do in Denmark is something that can benefit outside the Danish borders. And we're a small country, we have 5 million people, so even if we do amazingly and cut our carbon emission, it doesn't really help us much if we don't see similar things happening in other countries. The 4 missions that were chosen, the headline and the topics, was all with a focus to reduce carbon emissions. So the first was the capture and storage of carbon dioxide. It was green fuels for transport and industry. It was climate and eco-friendly agriculture and food production. And it was circular economy with a focus on plastic and textile. These topics were chosen based on the criteria I gave you before. This was areas where they saw there was a potential for big reduction. It was sectors that played a key role in the Danish industry, and where you could see, okay, if we can do something in this field, we can come a really long way to achieving the goals for 2030 and 2050. Before the partnerships was actually formed, there was a long process of actually making roadmaps for these partnerships. As I said, this is combining industry and academia, and you can have quite different perspectives on what's needed, so it was really important to get the stakeholders on the same page and to also be the ones actually driving what is it that we need with the technology, what is the technology we need, what is the legal aspects of this area, what is the business aspect of this area, what is the social aspect of this area, and then make a roadmap. How do we go from that knowledge to the objective for 2030 and 2050? So the Danish Innovation Fund, who is in charge of funding these missions, they launched a call where they invited stakeholders to draft these roadmaps. 12 roadmaps was made. It was a very long and complex journey. I know there was probably some of the stakeholders involved during this process who were a little bit frustrated with the discussions. But at the end of the day, roadmaps was there, and I think the partners in the process had a better understanding of what was needed to get on the same page for the actual implementation of the partnerships. This slide shows you basically the overall phase. So basically we went from roadmaps, we had the 12 roadmaps. After that we had a call for partnership foundation where partnerships should go together and apply to be the mission. And then after that we went into the project activities. And this was quite a long phase. We started in 2021, and then the roadmaps came. Then the partnerships came, and it's only back in this summer that we had all 4 partnerships established, and they're still quite new. So if it's just give you a little bit of insight into each of the inner mission and partnerships, I will not mention all the partners here because then you will have so many slides, you can't really see it all. But if you look to the inner mission 1 on the carbon capture, usage and storage, this is a partnership of 53 different partners. Basically all the key universities are present here. All the industries that are relevant for this mission, they're present here. The municipalities that are especially involved in this field, they are represented here. And the same with NGOs and what we call research technology organizations in Denmark. This partnership has received upfunding of around 30 million USD, and they have already launched 20 different research projects in 5 different topics. So they are looking to chemical carbon capture, they are looking to biological carbon capture and storage, they are looking to geological carbon storage, CO2 utilization, and finally, and also very important, this society and system analysis, because again, you cannot take the technologies alone and then think you can achieve the objective at hand. You need to also look at how is the system and the society to implement this. This is a key aspect of all partnerships. The second mission is looking for the green fuels in transport and industry. Basically, they are focused on how can we develop green fuels to phase out fossil fuels in shipping and heavy road transport, aviation, and maritime shipping by 2030. It is a partnership of 60 different partners. Again, all the key stakeholders are present here. They have received the same amount of funding as the other one, and they have 3 different work streams. They're looking to the technology sides, so what you would also look to here in Korea, in electrolysis and so on. They are looking to infrastructure, how can you build PTX, power-to-X plants. They're looking into the sector coupling on how to introduce green fuels into the energy mix. And they're also looking into the business and market development and the social acceptance, which I think is very important. You see it here in Korea where you're trying to develop your renewable energy, you're trying to develop the offshore wind industry, but there is some concerns about this in not only the Korean population, but I think in most societies about what does this mean for us to have either a big windmill farm in our backyard, a PTX plant, fuel station, whatever it is, this raises concern. And of course it does. So it's very important to see how can we work with local communities to also make it more acceptable to have it placed right next to you. The Inner Mission 3, the third one, is looking into the agricultural sector. The agricultural sector in Denmark is very big. We export meat, pork, butter. I see a lot of Danish butter here in Korea, Danish milk. So it's important to handle this one, and it's probably also one of the ones that can be a little bit tricky to some extent, unless you also look to how people actually use and consume foods. Again, swapping from meat-heavy diets to different solutions. This mission, again, has all the main stakeholders in the ecosystem. They have also launched already 11 different projects. They received the same amount of funding as the previous two, and they are working towards the 2030 goal. The final mission, which is a little bit of an outlier to some extent, is the circular economy and the reuse of plastic and textile. I think we already know the waste to energy is a hot topic to some extent, but we also need to look how can we actually rethink our production chains and reuse the plastic, minimize plastic use, or find better use of it than just burning it off. This mission has, again, it's the largest mission with 92 partners, but has the lowest funding of only 100 million DKK, or $50 million. Again, it has 3 different work streams: textile, plastic and textile, and plastics. I'll just give you a little bit of examples of some of the ongoing projects in the 2 of the missions. And these 2 missions are the one we are mostly focused on here in ICDK Seoul, because it's the one we can see the strongest connection to the Korean market and Korean ecosystem. So if we take the Inie Mission 2 for the green fuels, there is of course a clear reason for Denmark and Korea to collaborate here. You have a big hydrogen sector, a big demand. You have expertise in that area. In Denmark, we have the renewable energy, we have the wind farms, we have the expertise in electrolysis. And this is what we are trying to work also at the center and innovation center to see how can we bridge those strongholds. Some of the projects here, they range from the technology needed. It can be electrolysis for hydrogen, it can be ammonia plants, it can be the whole safety procedure around Power-to-X. How can you ensure that it won't blow up next to you? It's the PTX, the Power-to-X coupling with the sector and the life cycle analysis, and it's also the whole issue about engaging local communities. And in each of these projects, you have different stakeholders involved. You have, of course, the universities, they're a very central stakeholder here, but you also have some of the companies and the municipalities who are active in this area, who are also seeing some of these projects as a way to drive the regional development in their area. The other example is the Inie Mission 3, which is the agricultural mission. They again also have a different focus area. A lot is focused on agricultural production. It can be reducing the methane emission from cows by feeding them microalgae, for example. Here in Korea, we could see, okay, what could we do with seaweed in this field? It can also be how can we increase the use of plant-based material in our food production. It can also be how can we actually mitigate climate impacts from using from plant production with biochar, and also the way to see how can we make a safer and more sustainable protein for the future. So what happens next? As I said, the mission was just launched. The partnership was launched this year, and they are still quite new. They have had the funding for the first projects. More funding is expected to come. They are expected to internationalize, both to bring in the knowledge and expertise that they don't currently have within the mission itself, but also to get more funding needed. This has been a very big process. A lot of people have been involved. Transaction costs of forming partnerships like this are very high. So it needs to be a partnership that can last for many years for it to be worthwhile. They of course also expected to take some of the technologies and solutions they're making to the global market. Again, this was one of the objectives about making the missions, is also to see how can we support an industry in this field. So again, trying to combine our climate needs and objectives with our needs for also ensuring continued growth, development, employment opportunities, etc. In Denmark. And I also expect that this is something we'll be looking very much into at the Innovation Center here in Seoul. We are very much focused on how can we help the Danish mission to get access to Korean partners who would be relevant for the mission. So this is also something I would advise for you guys to, if you see an opportunity here to connect to what you're doing, please reach out. We'll be happy to talk. And I think this is basically the end. So thank you for listening to me, and have a nice evening.